Flying over insane terrain like this can put you on top of the world. So grateful to be there, having the best time of your life. But when everything goes wrong and you break both of your legs and are stuck on the side of a mountain, you might consider that your risk-reward calculation was off. Most pilots get this calculation wrong. Today I'm going to tell you how, and I'm also going to break down this video. Are you ready? Here we go.
See ya.
What's up, everybody? This is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here. If you're new, I'm Ari. I teach high-level paragliding with emotional intelligence and relationship skill because technical skills alone make incomplete pilots. This video is such a clear example of that. It's a heavy video for me. If you've noticed on this channel, I don't really like to do crash footage in general, and this, coming from someone who's only one degree of separation from me in a place that I know and love, is a bit heavy for me. And I just want to tell you before we get going that I'm running the integrated pilot course, which is covering so many topics like this. Starts on October 19th. Risk assessment, mindset, technical skills, emergency procedures, and weather forecasting like a pro. Links in the description. Check it out. So we're going to watch this video one time through here, and then I'm going to talk about some of the things that you can't see in the video. And also at the end, I'll break down the technical skills, exactly what happened physically here that led to the crash. Okay. Oh, it gives me jitters to watch this. This is definitely one of the heaviest crashes that has been sent in by subscribers. This is the Texel Gruppa just above Murano, Italy, Dorf Tirol. This is the White Peak right here. This is the White Peak. This is the place I have flown a lot. This is a place where dear friends of mine live. This is the home of Aaron Durgatti and Matthias and Rollo and the Fa. Very dear friends of mine. I've been here 3 times. I've paraglided all over this area. I really, really love it. These are spring conditions. As you can see, the pilot is flying over this small peak. There's a little cross right here. Okay. In the summer months, there are big alpine lakes up here. We rig high lines over them and we paraglide up to them. Here, as he turns back towards the valley, you see this is Murano, Italy right here. And you can see all over the Dolomites from this vantage. Incredible, incredible place. So, the pilot not in a climb and still turning back. So we're not totally sure. Not strong booming lift right here. It's obviously not a problem, but not climbing. Then he's pointing it back towards the valley. All of the snow definitely affects where the thermals will trigger, where they're going to come from. So now it seems like the pilot is on the first step of the speed bar, has lots of clearance to his right, and is approaching a really big peak on the left. This is a peak I've flown over many times. Really jagged, very gnarly terrain right here, okay? And as you see, pilot is basically hugging this giant peak, flying closer and closer to it all the time. Lots of clearance to the right. But still, pilot is choosing terrain over clearance. Flying a range X Alps 2 with a high B Skywalk Kumeo. So a little bit of beeps there. He turns around for it. It was kind of barely beeps at all. This is springtime in the Alps. Gets a couple more beeps right there. But on a day like this, you can expect 10 meters per second in some climbs. So now he's on the rears. Still real close to terrain here. Still lots of clearance on his right. Oh, some kind of bump that keeps him off of the rears. Looking at his glider. He's in some kind of something he knows. He's on edge here. A little bit of pitch, still choosing to stay very close to the terrain, choosing to scratch it. takes a 50% collapse, glider shoots. He's over controlling, left, right, over control, deep stall, glider shoots and is flying. Object fixation, crashes into the rock, crashes again, starts tumbling, screaming. Luckily, the glider is catching him here, crashing against the rocks more, tumbling, crashing. Lucky he lands on a ledge here. Immediately, he starts Hey Siri. Immediately, he calls 911. He actually gets rescued off this ledge by a helicopter. Okay, very heavy video. So, hurts me to watch it. And this pilot broke both of his legs there, crashing both of his ankles. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks, underwent 3 surgeries to put his legs back together, was in a wheelchair for 6 months. Big cost here. Big cost. I want to invite you to consider the difference between this pilot. Let me give you a couple of backstories here, and I invite you to consider the implications of each. So, option 1 is this pilot is 23 years old, lives at his parents', has great health insurance, has lots of family available to care for him. His parents will foot the bill for all of his medical expenses. Okay, this will be an expensive lesson. Or option 2 is this pilot is 43 years old, the father of 4, the sole breadwinner of his family. His wife doesn't work and battles with Lyme disease. He cares for his aging parents, and together they care for her aging parents as well. The implications of the crash are radically different based on who you are and what the shape of your life is. And this is a calculation that should go into your risk assessment. And most pilots don't know how to consider this. So I want to invite you to consider this. So basically, a sane paraglide pilot, someone that we are comfortable paragliding around, they take the level of risk that they think they're taking, right? The level of risk that you think you're taking is the level of risk that you're actually taking. So often when pilots come into the sport is what makes us uncomfortable watching them is like, oh, there's something they don't know about what they're doing, whether that's the consequence of it or the likelihood of it happening. And taking the level of risk that you think you're taking is incredibly difficult. It is incredibly difficult. This is something that's not spoken, and what your risk tolerance is not something that you speak. It's not something that you intellectualize. It's literally an embodied decision through every action that you take as you fly. Because something that most people don't have a full grasp of is that when every single time you fly your glider, you're absolutely playing for keeps. Like you are risking your life. You are gambling with your life. And so how you conceive of the weight, the worth, your esteem, like what your life means is going to play into your risk assessment. So the risk you think you're taking is the risk that you're taking. That's a very high bar, and it's something that we should all strive for. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the risk versus reward. We say this all the time, but most pilots don't actually have a sophisticated understanding of what risk reward calculation really means. So on the reward side, you are a human being, you have a limbic system, you have a reward system, you get brain chemicals based on what you do. So your reward system is a combination of everything from your being challenged and building skills and feeling competence and building self-respect, right? All the way to being in flow state, experiencing transcendence, experiencing oneness with nature, witnessing nature, like the views and the beauty. There's also social rewards. There is your reputation. There is your identity, who you want people to perceive you as. There's glory. Most pilots put into shadow some element of their reward, that they don't like to admit that they do paragliding to be perceived a certain way or based on their identity of who they think they are or the glory that they get or the reputation. Most of that gets pushed into shadow and people just say, oh, I just love to paraglide because I love to paraglide. But when you have a life-changing crash, most of the bullshit goes away and you actually get a really clear fucking look at who you are and why you do things. The other side of the risk-reward calculation is the risk. And when you're trying to calculate risk, there's two things things that you're trying to calculate. One is the likelihood that something would happen, and you multiply that by the consequence of it happening, okay? How pilots get this wrong is they either under or overestimate the likelihood of something happening. If they over-index for that, then they're constantly scared and they fly way out of things and they don't find the climb and all these things. Or they under-index, they're overconfident, they don't think the bad thing is going to happen. But the part of this calculation that I want to introduce to you today is that the consequences of something happening are more nuanced and farther reaching than you have previously considered. When I invite you to consider the implications of the crash, whether the kid is a college student whose bills will be paid and care will be given by his family, or if this guy is a father of 4 and the sole breadwinner and a lot of people depend on him and rely on him for their well-being, the implications are very different. So understanding that when you crash your paraglider, you have consequences that affect you and your body. Those are your risks to take. But you also have implications on the community. I have been a first responder to paragliding fatalities, and I can tell you they impact me. They impact me so profoundly. They impact my paragliding. They impact my mental health. They impact my relationships. They impact my productivity at work. They impact my desire to paraglide. That's so obvious that impacts other people if you get seriously injured or killed paragliding. It also impacts your family, right? Like whether this kid is a college student or a father, like his family is deeply impacted in a negative way by him crashing, okay? And if he dies, then, the impacts are not hard to imagine. Oh yeah, like you have a grieving mother, you have a grieving wife, you have children who are fatherless, right? The implications are really not that hard to imagine when you imagine them. It's just that we tend to compartmentalize that only consequence that we're dealing with in paragliding is our physical health. And that's a huge part of it. Don't get me wrong. And we all have a right to gamble with our health as much as we want, whether we are a college student or we have kids. We have that liberty. But my hope is that I can stir up something in you to help you see your life from a bit more broad perspective so that you can start weighing these things on your own. Because this pilot in question, he wrote me a long letter about what happened and what happened after. And honestly, it's quite beautiful. It helped him realize that he was out over his skis. He was progressing too fast, and there was things he didn't know about this. The forecasters had said that this was a day where novice pilots could become easily overwhelmed. He didn't realize that until after he crashed, so he didn't even have all of the information to weigh the options. And now if you put him back in this position, would he fly that close to terrain again? Absolutely not. There's no way he would do that. Of course he was going to fly, just give himself the widest margin. And of course you have to have this kind of crash to have that kind of perspective sometimes. But hopefully you sitting there on your computer or your phone watching this video of someone else's life-changing, absolute life-changing, both of his legs broken, 6 months in a wheelchair, 3 surgeries, absolutely life-changing experience. Hopefully you can learn from that so you don't have to do it. And I'm here trying to poke holes in your previous conception of risk tolerance. And I'm trying to ask the questions and stir the pot in just a way that you can answer this for yourself, because I'm not going to tell you, oh, you can't take the risk. I've made my whole life about taking risk, basically. I made my whole identity around being gnarlier than you. And at some point, whether that was dealing with my friend's death or dragging his body off of a mountain or doing 5 helicopter rescues in paragliding in 12 years. I just have seen some shit, and I also really care about my life. I have a lot to give. I have a wonderful wife. We're starting a family. My risk tolerance changes every single day, and I'm just trying to feel like the risk that I take is worth it, and that I'm sane about it, and that I'm sober about it, and that I'm considering my life from a broad perspective, so that if something happens that I can't avoid, then at least I fucking tried. Because considering your life and its broader perspectives does not take the hazard away from your paragliding. You're not going to get to 0 just because you think about things harder. We all take enormous risks paragliding, and we do it with our lives every single time. You're playing for keeps every time your feet leave the ground. But being able to understand that your risk is not just the likelihood of something bad happening, it's multiplied by the consequence of what happens when it does. And that consequence is not just your physical body, but it actually is your impact on community, your impact on your family, your impact on your psyche, right? There's financial implications. You might have dependence. All of these things shift with your life circumstances, and they should. I took way more risk when I was 21 than I do now, and thank fucking God, right? And the other thing is the reward. You got to get really, really clear that you are a human being and you have reward systems and your motivations are not as pure as you think. I have taken so much risk trying to impress people, trying to be loved, trying to be safe, trying to have my needs met. And there really is no shame there. There really isn't. But just getting clear and focused and observant of that reality is how I align the risk I'm taking with the risk that I think I'm taking. Okay? And that's sane paragliding. That's competent pilothood. Okay. So as promised, I want to review exactly physically what happens in this flight and what I think the pilot should do. As we scroll back here, we can see as he looks at this peak or this low ridge, obviously pointed over the low ridge. That's just easy. Anytime that you fly along the terrain, the chance that you fly into the back of the thermal and fly through some turbulence that's running up the hill, obviously the ground produces drag, it creates turbulence. So anytime a thermal is going to be right on the face of a mountain, it is going to be turbulent and you're going to want to push out into the wind to find the core that is less affected by the ground. In this case, he flies right through the back of the thermal and into some turbulence that he wasn't capable of handling. Right? This day he launched with air and Duragati from just above the Muthoff. And would this have collapsed my glider? Absolutely not. No way. Aaron's glider? Not a chance. So you got to like weigh this for your skills, what you're capable of handling, what you are really dead sure you can handle because of experience. This was the pilot had not been flying for 2 years here. And in hindsight, he sees that he was going too fast, pushing too hard here. That's obvious to him now. So the other thing, as we get in close to this terrain, I scrub forward, he's on the rears. He keeps kind of just hedging towards this as he flies into this little bit of turbulence and he kind of notices that, oh, something's happening. Immediately when that happens, put your back to the terrain and fly away from the terrain. Every second that you're flying, you should be flying more and more clearance, more and more clearance, more and more clearance. That's not what happens here. He flies into some stuff. He kind of looks at his, let me find this little spot here. He kind of flies into some stuff and he looks up at his glider, but he keeps his heading going, right? He's just too close to the terrain here. This is basically a non-event. If he had the clearance, the glider eventually flies and he flies away. But at this point, you see he looks up at his glider. He knows he's in some kind of bumps. He needs to make a 90 to the right, fly away from the terrain. He kind of starts to do that right there, but then also just kind of turning back towards the terrain here. Right? Terrain clearance, terrain clearance, terrain clearance. It's basically your safety. Your risk tolerance and your terrain clearance are almost synonymous. So if you want to have more margin, stay further away from the ground, especially when you're thermaling in the spring in the Alps over gnarly terrain. Obvious to both of us now. Okay. So then what happens? He's aims himself right along the terrain here, right when he takes this 50% collapse. Talking about prevention, this is just unchecked pitch. This is not some uncatchable collapse here. This is just unchecked pitch. Does that make sense? Just unchecked pitch. He could have caught the glider. He doesn't. And then we basically see something that we've seen on this channel over and over, which is over control. He stalls the glider. He stalls the glider. He stalls the glider. It's pilot-induced oscillation. Now he sees his own shadow. And then right here, you can see his shadow on the wall in front of him. At this point, the glider flies, and I want you to notice what his head points at from the moment that the glider flies. Where's his head pointed? Where's his head pointed? Where's his head pointed? Oh, he goes right to where his head was pointed. Okay, this is referred to as object fixation. In this instance right here, you can see that the glider is either flying or starting to fly. His body position, he's weight shifted over to the left, which is going to take him into the wall. The sooner he can get weight shifted to the right and pull the right brake, the better. And honestly, it could, I think, have been a near miss. Obviously, the initial collapse was mostly a non-event. He could have just gone hands up and the glider would have flown again and he would have flown away from this. He over-controlled the glider, and then at the very last mistake was a bit of object fixation that he may or may not have been able to clear the rock. But no, he crashes into the rock, and the resulting crash and tumbling down the mountain, I don't need to review again for you. It's gruesome, and I don't like to watch it. I don't love paragliding crash videos, although they are sobering and can help us see, oh wow, we are taking some big risks when we fly sometimes, and being sane about that and calculated is something that is worthwhile. So if you want to go deep on this kind of thing with me, as well as the emergency procedures that actually matter and forecasting the weather like a pro so you can stay safe, join me at the Integrated Pilot. Starts October 19th. It'll be available online after that, but this is the live founding cohort of this. It's going to be awesome. Links in the description below. Thank you so freaking much to this man who sent me this and whose life was changed, and also who used this as a positive, transformative experience in his life that now he knows he is so grateful to be alive and so grateful for the lesson and that he got away from it. I'm just moved by your perspective, and thank you so much for sharing this with us. I hope that it helps other pilots live their lives in as integrated as way possible and be grateful for their health and their bodies and their opportunity to paraglide. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Stay safe. We'll see you on the next episode.